Well, Jeff's thing is that he's a healing evangelist. He's a bit like the crusader ambulance. Comes to the rescue, wants to rescue the whole world. The whole world, of course, is here to be rescued, but it's not ready yet, and God is doing exactly what is needed to rescue them. It's not a quick fix. Jeff can be there at the, final movement of life, or life in this world, where you graduate. And that's a very, very good contribution. I mean, but the bulk of the planet, if you like, in this case, is simply learning. And for some that can be a very long process. And as we've seen, there are all sorts of shortcuts, but, good company and good scripture and seeking out peaceful way of life and so on. Worship, praise, thanks, all sorts of things that can help and contribute majorly. So people get encouragement in that way in the measure that they're ready for. And you can force any measure upon them, but if it's ahead of time, it's actually not ideal. You can tell when it's not ahead of time. It's when it's just taken to straight away. It just fits for them. They say, I want to do that. And they do it. They might take the step of being vegetarian or fruitarian or praising God for all things, or prayer or meditation or worship or whatever it is. It could be something like Kriya yoga. It could be some practice that helps. Some way of thinking, like Marshall Rosenberg's NVC. And some people just, wow, that's a good solution. That's what I need. And they're into it. Now I know the things I've just mentioned I've engaged in. I've engaged in them all, and to some extent I keep them all. In other words, I'm not just focused on one. That doesn't mean to say at times one shouldn't be, because that may be the stage you're at. And it would be best if you now focus for at least a while, a season, on something or other. And some things will be incorporated into your life, into your being, long term. Now in the case of Jeff, here we see a sort of a parallel picture of the individual. We got imagine the church now to be an individual. It has a great need for a variety of inputs and things that contribute towards spiritual maturity, if you like, being prepared for an eternal life in heaven, so to speak. But all they're getting basically from Jeff is, well, what the world perhaps rightly labels as a fanaticism. Now don't get me wrong, it's validated by being of God, gets miracles, gets conversions, which is, of course, major miracle. And for sure some of those conversions are going to be, long-term, stable. The step forward that was finally made, or finally in the sense of, turning to God. And the church is receiving an essential teaching in that way. But of course it has a whole variety of other needs too. And if they're not met, then the person's still sick. In this case, the church. It wonders where it's going because it's the needs of the individuals there are not going to be met. It's not on the mission statement, so to speak, the recognised goals of the leader. The leader is going to evangelise not just Hamilton, not just New Zealand, but the whole world before this cataclysmic judgment time comes. So the other needs are just neglected. And the congregation is despised for not being as focused and wonderful as the pastor, who is not really a pastor, he's an evangelist, and the church is there to feed and fuel the outreach, the evangelism. The church is not really there to meet the needs of the church members. So they sit there with needs unmet and a feeling of guilt that they're not as active and successful in the way that Jeff is. And he despises them because they're not doing what they should be doing as he understands it. And he of course has taken on a project which is not valid. We're not here to change the classroom. We're not here to overthrow the school. We're here in the trust of God that he's teaching all with great care and is doing exactly the best thing. Now, of course, most of the congregation don't have that view because they've got Jeff's view, which is the sort of, at least part of the bedrock Christian view that it's a terrible war going on between a God of good that's struggling with a wicked God of evil. You see, there's more than one God out there. There's super beings called evil spirits that and Satan that are at war with God, and where they come from is not clear, or they're fallen angels, but how could you fall? I mean, how could God be so incompetent as to let this happen? And the argument is, of course, that he's not. It's all part of his wonderful design, but somehow he's still going to, find this whole legion of beings that are outside, excluded, for the pit, or for annihilation, or even eternal damnation. I mean, it's not my God. It's not my God. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that my understanding can handle horrendous evil. We are children. We do not understand or have all the answers. We trust in our parents. It's our parents' battle, if you like. And it may not be their battle, it might be something totally different to how we're conceiving it and how we see it. Our job is to do what? To learn the lessons well. To be blessed by this experience here in the material world. To come to loving God. To come to being devoted to all that is good. And what is good is defined as that which brings life and joy and peace and hope. All the good things that we attribute to God. So there is not this anxiety and stress, this trauma and battle. It's a misconception. It is instead a very good school, one that seems difficult to us at times, seems to have all sorts of thoughts from our view. But we trust in God to overrule, to love and care for us, and to be capable of bringing us through. You see, you just have to think, what is the ideal character you want your children to have? It's not a cold respect, but it is a respect. It's not an indulgent love that they're to take on, but a genuine, true love to bring life eternal to all life. But that is not our job. That's God's. Our job is to be right with God, our God. To pursue goodness in the way that we understand it to be. So that we treasure and advance the goodness of God as we understand it. all the qualities: care, peace, kindness, creativity, integrity, faithfulness, goodness, loving kindness, compassion, joy, hope, health, life itself. So what's my obsession? Am I, since I'm unusual, well, we're all unusual, aren't we, but what's my obsession that's actually blocking the completeness of what I should be at? You know, am I a perfectionist which picks one goal and sacrifices all the others for it? You know, concentrates on his kids or his wife or his career or his hobby or his obsession or, you know, computing or gambling or the other pitfalls that could be there that could take our entire focus so that we starve out all the other things that need optimizing. I think it is this, is it, that I've learned from economics, that to maximize utility we should allocate our scarce resources. To do that, and that's achieved by putting your attention to where the return is greatest with each piece of resource that we have. So where is it best used? So we're presented with a variety of needs, but that variety is severely curtailed or restricted by an obsession with one goal in particular. And what we need to do is rather allocate our resources in such a way that we optimize each presented need is only given the resources that are appropriate. And the criteria of being appropriate is, are the resources best used here? So, in the case of Jeff, he could spend all his time on evangelism and neglect pastoral care of, say, the church. Perhaps neglect his family and home. Perhaps neglect his health, his inner peace and walk with God. A hermit might be doing the reverse, focusing on his inner peace and walk with God, and really not much help to other people at all. In fact, absent from all people in the end, apart from a few devotees that want to have the same obsession. So we get what the world calls the twisted life of saints. They're remarkable, they're fantastic, there's something godly about them, but they're skewed, twisted, deformed, in some ways they're horrific. They're abnormal. One limb, if you like, is developed beyond all others. One ability, one focus. Don't get me wrong, this has some function in the world. I mean, if you want to find out how to evangelize, well, you go and ask Jeff. Go work with him for a while. If you want to find out how to be devoted to a particular organisation, well, you go and ask a career man, don't you? Or perhaps that's if you want to find out how to be devoted to your career, not an organisation. Some people serve organisations utterly faithfully, and in a sense it gets them nowhere. They're just never recognised or appreciated. They get some perks and benefits, but not compared to the cost that such obsession has. Whereas another career man might get to the top in no time at all, not particularly of benefit to the company, but he's running it. They're all wrong, you see. They're all wrong in that they're not optimizing. Life is presenting a series of needs, all of which need to be met. And a godly life too presents many needs. You have need for the normal physical things of man's physical existence, food, shelter, finance and so on, security, love and care of others, responsibility, all sorts of things that you can work out our needs are important and therefore should be met, and therefore you know your values. And then you can allocate your resources, mainly your time and attention, your focus, to now optimizing. In other words, seeking out which needs to be encouraged, helped, focused, move towards, being sensitive to what cost that is as regards the other needs. So you're optimizing all the time. And that's simply a lesson of economics. Probably the only lesson, possibly. Now we've got some other trivial ones, but that's a key one. In other words, the pitfall that we're looking at, the mistake of falling into the pit, is to be a perfectionist. A perfectionist takes whatever seems to be most important on the list and tries to meet that need, that value, completely, perfectly. And he sacrifices all the other needs to this. And that sacrifice destroys him. So don't do that. Avoid that one. Okay. Is the first commandment such a pitfall? Oh, God forbid, you say. And in a sense rightly, because no, it's got in it the safety mechanism. We're going to love God, and God is what? God is the personification of all your true needs and values. All the true needs of life are there so that you develop the values necessary for the kingdom.
Right, well, I'll edit it there, cut off halfway through, and go on to the next recording if you want to follow on. Thank you, Dad.